In 1964, John Bell proved that two particles, once connected, remain permanently linked, regardless of any distance between them. 25 centuries earlier, Lao Tzu described a reality that Bell's theorem would eventually confirm in 81 chapters, without once mentioning particles. The Taoists called it the nature of the Tao, and they developed a practice for living in alignment with it. That quantum non-locality 2.5 millennia later explains precisely why it works. When Alain Aspect published his experimental confirmation of Bell's theorem in 1982, after measuring entangled photons separated by 12 meters, changing the measurement settings after the photons were already in flight, the physics community faced a conclusion they could not avoid. The experimental evidence now points to a single conclusion. The universe at its most fundamental level is non-local. At the level at which particles exist before they become the objects we observe, there is no genuine separation between connected systems. Distance does not break the connection. Time does not break the connection. No physical barrier of any kind breaks the connection. Once two quantum systems have interacted, they behave as a single system, expressed in two locations. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. He found it deeply disturbing. Lao Tzu would have found it obvious. The Tao Te Ching is not a spiritual self-help text. It is a precise philosophical investigation of the nature of the field, underlying all observable phenomena. Chapter 25 describes what quantum field theory calls the unified field. There was something formless and perfect before the universe was born. Serene, empty, solitary, unchanging, infinite, eternally present. It is the mother of the universe. Chapter 34 describes what quantum non-locality confirms. The Tao flows everywhere to the left and to the right. All things depend upon it to exist. It does its work silently and makes no claim. Flows everywhere. All things depend upon it. No separation. This is not only metaphor. The Taoists were describing a property of reality that physics has since confirmed experimentally, but they arrived at it through a completely different door. And the Taoists built a complete practice around it, for living in alignment with a field that is non-locally connected, in the way Bell's theorem proved. Quantum non-locality has three properties that have no explanation in classical physics. First, instantaneous correlation. When you measure one particle of an entangled pair, the other particle adopts the corresponding state, instantaneously, not after a signal travels, not after any delay at all, faster than light, which, according to Einstein, should be impossible. Second, independence from distance. Aspect's experiment confirmed non-locality at 12 meters. Subsequent experiments have confirmed it at 1,200 kilometers. The distance is irrelevant. The correlation is equally instantaneous at any separation. Third, irreducibility. You cannot explain the correlation by saying each particle had a predetermined outcome, a hidden variable set at the moment of entanglement. Bell's theorem proves mathematically that hidden variable theories cannot reproduce the observed quantum correlations. The non-locality is not a gap in our knowledge. It is a feature of reality itself. Here is the bridge between the physics and the practice. If the universe is fundamentally non-local, if separation between connected systems is not a feature of the underlying reality, but an appearance that emerges at the scale of ordinary observation, then the Tao's description of universal interconnection is not a philosophical position. It is a description of the actual structure of the quantum field. And the Taoist practice of Wu Wei, acting in alignment with the Tao rather than against it, is the practical application of living as a node in a non-locally connected field, rather than as an isolated, separate particle. The physics confirms the practice. The practice embodies what the physics describes. Chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching begins with a statement that has puzzled Western translators for 2 centuries. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. This is not mystical evasion. It is a precise statement about the relationship between the quantum field and the mathematical representations we use to describe it. Any equation describing the unified quantum field is a named version, a map, not the territory. The actual field precedes all representation. It cannot be captured in an equation because equations are phenomena arising within it. The eternal Tao, the actual field, is prior to naming, prior to mathematics, prior to observation. String theory, M theory, loop quantum gravity, all named versions of the Tao, none of them the Tao itself. Chapter 4. The Tao is like a well used but never used up. It is like the eternal void filled with infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities, the quantum vacuum, the ground state of the unified field, containing all potential states before observation collapses them. Chapter 16. Return to the root is called stillness. This is called returning to one's destiny. Return to the source is stillness. This is the way of nature. Return to the source, to the quantum vacuum, to the state before the wave function collapses into definite phenomena. The Taoist practice of returning to stillness, returning to the root, is the practice of accessing the field before it becomes the 10,000 named things. Niels Bohr, one of the 3 physicists most responsible for the development of quantum mechanics, spent years attempting to understand the philosophical implications of his own theory. In 1947, when he was knighted by the Danish government and asked to design a coat of arms, he chose the Taoist symbol of yin and yang. His motto, Contraria sunt complementa, opposites are complementary. He was not making a casual cultural gesture. He recognized in the Taoist symbol a precise visual representation of the principle he had spent his career developing. Wave and particle, complementary, not contradictory, just as yin and yang are complementary expressions of the single Tao. The Taoists had mapped this territory 2,500 years before the physics arrived. Wu Wei is the most misunderstood concept in Taoist philosophy. It is usually translated as non-action or non-doing, but this misses the precision of the original. Wu means without. Wei means action, but specifically the kind of forced, ego-driven, self-referential action that comes from believing oneself to be separate from the Tao. Wu Wei is not inaction. It is action that arises from the field itself, rather than from the contracted self that believes it is isolated from the non-local field in which it is embedded. Chapter 48. In pursuit of learning, something is acquired every day. In pursuit of the Tao, something is dropped every day. Less and less is done until non-action is achieved. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone. When the contracted ego drops its grip, action still occurs, but it occurs as the expression of the field, not as the forcing of an isolated particle against the grain of the non-local reality in which it is embedded. Here is the quantum description of what Wu Wei produces. A contracted ego self-believing itself, separate, acts from the assumption of isolation. It generates actions that create resistance, consequences that arise from acting against the nature of the non-local field. The Tao Te Ching describes the result of this. Those who go against it fail. Those who attach to it also lose. Both forcing and grasping, two forms of acting from the contracted particle, rather than the field. Wu Wei action from the field is the recognition that you are not a separate particle, generating consequences in isolation. You are a node in a non-locally connected field. Your actions propagate through that field, not despite the field, but as the field expressing itself. When the separation dissolves, action becomes effortless, not because less happens, but because nothing is working against the grain of the underlying reality. Before the convergence, a brief observation. Right now, notice any sense of effort in this moment. Any sense of pushing against something, anything that feels like resistance. That sense of resistance, the Tao Te Ching says, is always the feeling of a contracted self, acting against a non-local field it believes it is separate from. What would action feel like from within the field, rather than against it? Let us map the quantum physics and the Taoist tradition side by side. The field. Quantum field theory, unified field, omnipresent, source of all phenomena. Tao Te Ching, the eternal Tao, unnamed origin, mother of the universe. Same description. Non-locality, Bell's theorem. Connected systems remain a single system, regardless of distance. Tao Te Ching, chapter 34. The Tao flows everywhere. All things depend on it to exist. Same property. The vacuum, quantum vacuum, infinite potential. All possible states before observation. Tao Te Ching, chapter 4. Eternal void, filled with infinite possibilities. Same description. The practice. Quantum mechanics, the observer participates in what the field becomes. Wu Wei act as the field, not as an isolated particle. Same instruction. The result. Quantum. Non-local correlation, the separated particle is never truly separate. Wu Wei. Effortless action, the separated self was never truly separate. Same recognition. The Taoists were not alone. The Vedic tradition called this practice nishkama karma. The Hermetics called it the great work. Three vocabularies, a convergent instruction. But the Taoists gave it its most precise name. Wu Wei. Action from the field, not from the particle that forgot it was feel. Modern neuroscience has identified the brain network, responsible for the contracted ego self. The default mode network, a set of brain regions that activate during self-referential thought, the narrative of I as a separate, isolated entity, moving through time. Neuroscience research has found repeated evidence that advanced practitioners of contemplative traditions, including lineages closely related to Taoist and Vedic inquiry, show measurably reduced default mode network activity compared to non-meditators. The neural signature of what Wu Wei describes, the quieting of the contracted self-referential loop, is measurable. When the DMN quiets, the reported experience is precisely what the Tao Te Ching describes. Action without effort, awareness without contraction, the sense of operating from within the field rather than against it. Here is what quantum non-locality and the Tao Te Ching are both pointing at precisely. You are not a separate particle, generating consequences in isolation. You are a node in a non-locally connected field, a field in which every action propagates, not through visible mechanisms, but through the underlying non-local structure of the quantum reality you are embedded in. The Tao Te Ching says, the Tao does not act, yet nothing is left undone. Not passivity, the recognition that the field is always acting, that the action you have been attributing to a separate self was always the field expressing itself. When that recognition settles, the effort stops, not because you do less, but because you stop working against the non-local field you were never separate from. Long pause, a short practice from the Taoist tradition. Not a breathing exercise, not a visualization, simply a noticing. Let the eyes close. Let the body settle. Notice whatever is arising right now. Sensation, sound, the feeling of the body, resting. Now notice, is there any effort in the noticing? The noticing itself, is it doing anything, or is it simply already happening? The Tao Te Ching says, "To the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders." This stillness already present is not something you achieve. It is what was always there, beneath the effort of the contracted self. The Tao, the field, non-locally connected to everything. Already here. Gently return, next time on Quantum Gnosis, the 5 ancient traditions that described quantum entanglement before Bell's theorem existed, and the 2022 Nobel Prize that confirmed every one of them. Ancient wisdom, quantum proof, direct knowing. This is Quantum Gnosis.